Cardinal Arthur Roche, the Vatican's prefect for divine worship, has a simple question for Catholics attached to the traditional Latin Mass. Why all this noise, he asks. What else is going on when they have been given the concession of this Mass? But for traditionalists, the answer is equally simple. What Roche calls a concession, previous popes called a permanent and venerable form of the Roman rite. And framing it otherwise, they argue, distorts both history and theology. In a March 27th interview with OSV News, Roche defended Pope Francis's 2021 motu proprio Traditionis Custodes, which severely restricted the Old Mass. He framed earlier permissions under John Paul II and Benedict XVI as temporary accommodation for those who could not adjust to the Reformed liturgy. What the Holy Father began to realize, Roche said, is that the concession granted to those who found the new rite difficult was being promoted against the reform of the liturgy from the Second Vatican Council, a promotion ultimately against the unity of the Church. He acknowledged that the Latin Mass attracts Catholics through its silence, music, and reverence, but instead of asking why those qualities are missing from many Novus Ordo celebrations, he warned against pitching one rite against the other. This is not a game, he said. There needs to be give and take on both sides. Critics argue Roche misrepresents what his predecessors actually did. Pope John Paul II's 1988 Ecclesia Dei decree explicitly sought to integrate traditionalists into the Church's life, not as a temporary fix, but to facilitate their ecclesial communion. Benedict XVI's 2007 Summorum Pontificum went further, declaring that the 1962 Missal was never juridically abrogated and is to be considered as an extraordinary expression of the same lex orandi of the Church. Benedict explicitly rejected the idea that the two forms would divide the Church. These two usages of the Church's lex orandi will in no way lead to a division in the Church's lex credendi, he wrote, for they are two usages of the one Roman rite. Roche's framing also overlooks history. The 1570 Missal of St. Pius V, later revised by John XXIII in 1962, was never abrogated. St. Pius V, in Quo Primum, explicitly prohibited its alteration under threat of divine penalty. That doesn't mean the liturgy cannot develop, but it does mean treating the old rite as a concession subject to revocation contradicts centuries of papal precedent. Roche invokes St. Paul. What I gave you to celebrate, I received from Jesus himself. But traditionalists ask, if fidelity to what was received matters, why is the form received for over 1,500 years treated as dispensable? When Roche questions why all this noise persists despite the Latin Mass remaining possible by papal authority, they hear not pastoral concern, but bewilderment that anyone would cling to a treasure he considers negotiable. Meanwhile, the bishops who most restrict the old rite are often those whose dioceses face the steepest declines in practice. The French bishops, by contrast, told Rome that the Latin Mass serves a genuine pastoral need and helps prevent the faithful from drifting to the SSPX. If unity is the goal, why ignore those reports? Roche may genuinely believe restricting the old rite serves unity, but for millions of Catholics, the Latin Mass isn't a concession they received from a pope. It's a treasure they received from the Church and from Christ through her. Treating it otherwise, they argue, doesn't heal division. It deepens it. The Cardinal's parting words are meant to sound reasonable. This is not a game. There needs to be give and take on both sides. But for traditionalists, the past 15 years have felt like all take and no give. And as July 1st approaches, with the SSPX planning episcopal consecrations, the liturgy wars show no sign of cooling.